Hello and welcome to our summary presentation for the fiscal year 2020. My name is Jonas Jarvius. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Q-linea. Before we move into the presentation, I would like to show our disclaimer slide in case I make any forward-looking statements. But if we then move into Q-linea, in short, we are a company that develops innovative and disruptive solutions for faster infectious disease diagnostics. You can see that within our vision, we're also working towards keeping antimicrobials or antibiotics safe to use now and for future generations. 2020 was a challenging year for the world. We saw the corona pandemic, and we still see the effects of the corona pandemic, but it was also a very exciting and productive year for the company. We worked relentlessly and very hard with our lead product, ASTar, as you can see on the image, to start the clinical studies at the end of the year. I will comment on a couple of the key milestones we achieved during that year. We are based in Uppsala, Sweden. We were founded in 2008, and we produce both consumables and instruments here in Sweden. But of course, you can't do nothing unless you have a great team. And at Q-linea, we truly have a great team. We grew it from 106 persons, employees and consultants, to 140 people at the end of the year. This is an image of the team a couple of years ago at the World Sepsis Day, and because of the pandemic, haven't been able to gather the whole team for a new group image. But as soon as the worlds open up, we'll of course do so. If we then look at the effects of the corona pandemic on Q-linea, it for sure has been a challenging year. It's caused great losses and had disrupted many businesses. But overall, I must say that we've really seen minimal effects on Q-linea caused by the pandemic. We have, of course, also continuously been working with updated guidelines, changing routines, in order for our staff to work as safely as possible, but of course also maintaining operations. And since the pandemic is not over, we're of course also continuously following the situation and changing and adapting our methods if need be. And of course, me as well as you really hope that vaccination will start to pick up and we can actually come back to a more normal life than we've seen over the last year. There are still some possible effects from the pandemic. We can see, of course, we might see delays in clinical studies. We might also see some effects on the commercial activities, having access to sites, or we can see expanded levels of funding needs. But as I said, when we look back in retrospect over the year, I think we managed very well to keeping our timelines and keeping our development at a very high pace. If we look at what we do at Q-linea, we're talking about infectious diseases. The first product and the first application for ASTar is positive bloodstream infections. The main condition for that is sepsis, and sepsis is really an overreaction of our own immune system to an infection you have somewhere in the body. It could be a skin wound, could be a pneumonia, for instance. The bacteria then leak out into the bloodstream, and the immune system can overreact so dramatically that it starts shutting down the body, and it can lead to death. And it is actually the most common cause of death we have in our hospitals. And if we look worldwide, every third second a person will die from sepsis. Today, we have two stages of sepsis and septic shock, depending on the escalation of the disease. And we can see that when you enter septic shock, meaning you have multiple organs affected, you also move into intensive care bed at the hospital. These, as you know and heard during the pandemics, are very expensive beds, and we in general have too few of them. And this is really one of the drivers. The sepsis is the #1 cost driver for the US healthcare system. Another problem with sepsis is that it's a race against time. Today, the initial diagnostic takes several days, meaning that you as a physician will have to start empiric therapy to fight the infection. But in up to 50%, that initial empiric therapy is wrong. It either could be too broad or it could be ineffectual. The severe problem here is around 20% that started on this treatment have died before you get the traditional diagnostic results. And this is really where Q-linea can come in and would like to change that, provide much more faster, actionable results. And I will come back to some of the benefits with that. If we look at the second problem, that's antimicrobial resistance. You hear about it in the news, and it has been presented as really the biggest threat to mankind. And this is bacteria becoming more and more resistant to the various drugs we can try to treat them with. The problem is also that we do a lot of unnecessary treatment because we're lacking diagnostic tools to direct the appropriate treatment as fast as possible. And in some cases for respiratory diseases, up to 65% of all initial treatment can actually be unnecessary. If you look at the darker side, so to speak, of AMR, is that we know today that a lot of people die from infections that we cannot treat. But if you look 30 years ahead, this is a study showing to the lower right that expects that number can rise up to 10 million people that will die of infections that we can't treat unless we change the way we treat patients or we improve diagnostics. So these two very important aspects are, of course, where we would like to be a piece of the puzzle with our company, our solutions, and ASTar being the first one now targeting sepsis. This image highlights on the upper part the traditional diagnostic workflow for septic patients. I cannot go into the details, but you can see it's a multi-step, multi-day process. And you start therapy, of course, empirically day 1, but in some cases you have to wait until day 4 until you actually know what type of antibiotic or antimicrobial you should use to treat that particular patient infection with. If you look at the lower part, this is where ASTar dramatically can provide a much faster workflow, providing much faster actionable results, but also reducing the workload of the staff in the lab, meaning that you have minimal hands-on time. You can then, of course, do other type of activities, also important in the microbiology labs. So in sepsis, time to actionable results, it was really matters. If we look at ASTar as a whole, we developed it with potential future customers really from day 1, and we have 4 pillars during our development. It needs to be easy to use, needs to be fast, obviously, needs to be comprehensive, meaning that you can actually act upon the result when you receive the test. But it also needs to be accurate. And I think we have done a great job, the entire team, to accomplish all these 4 pillars. It's fully automated, it has minimal hands-on time, it has a random access workflow, meaning that if you have available capacity in ASTar, you can immediately start analysis. It's fast for positive blood cultures. It gives results in approximately 6 hours, and you can have up to 12 patient samples running in parallel in the system. But it's also comprehensive. It covers fastidious, non-fastidious bacteria, covers many antibiotics and antimicrobials in a wide concentration ranges. And we really built ASTar as a platform. So apart from blood, we have also demonstrated the use for urinary tract testing and also for isolates, for instance. So we see that ASTar in the future can really grow and expand to other areas, another type of diagnostic workflow within the same system. But it's also accurate. The highest precision you can provide for susceptibility test is called the MIC value. That stands for the minimum inhibitory concentration. And that's a concentration that kills or inhibits bacteria. And ASTar can deliver just that. So we think that it's a very well-suited product, and it's been a hard and long journey to develop it. But we think so far we've done a great job. One comment on that was we performed a preclinical study together with Uppsala University Hospital during April of 2020. And here you can see the workflow on a high level, and you can also see the statement from Ehsan Gaderi, who is running the Uppsala University Hospital, the microbiology laboratory. And it was really super simple to use. Anyone could load a test at any given time point, and it really freed up time. And you should remember that during April, we had really the first wave of corona here in Uppsala in Sweden. So of course, being able to have a system that's easy to operate, take little time, is of a great value during this type of situation. So I think this is one of the greatest testimonial we could have get before the product coming out to market. If we then look at the benefits of faster diagnostic for these type of patients, these are 3 independent health economic studies. If you look to the left, I think the most striking here is that you can see a dramatic reduction in mortality. And all this is summarized if you can provide the diagnostic 24 hours faster than the current practice. Also, if you can move from the broad spectrum treatment to a narrow spectrum directed treatment faster, you will reduce the pressure for these super infections. They cause a lot of suffering and they are expensive to treat. And of course, you can also then reduce antimicrobial resistance, which is very important for the hospital and society in the long term. But you can also see that providing the correct treatment faster enabled the patients to be sort of leaving the intensive care bed on average 2 days faster than with the traditional treatment. This, of course, frees up beds, which is important, but it also saves money for the hospitals. And as I said, this was a summary for 24-hour faster, and ASTar in general, depending on the setting, of course, could save some 24 to 40 hours. So we think this is a very interesting scenario for rapid susceptibility testing and the values they can provide or could provide in the future. This is one example I just wanted to highlight from the preclinical study that we performed last year. This was an elderly gentleman, 73 years of age, had neurosurgery, and he was then diagnosed with aspiration pneumonia. And in the middle part of the screen, you can see the traditional workflow and the timestamps from the diagnostic workflow. The patient was started on cefotaxime day 1. During day 2, you had a positive blood culture, you could do the gram stain. The sample could then be loaded into ASTar, and it of course provided then the results already the same day. The sample, of course, also moved into the traditional workflow. And you can see here that ASTar provided that this particular bacteria was resistant to cefotaxime already day 2, whilst you had to wait to day 3 with the traditional workflow. And this type of faster answer can dramatically change the outcome for patients. But not only was ASTar faster, it could also provide results on 10 more antibiotics compared to the standard practice, meaning that you have a wealth of opportunity and a broader repertoire to choose from when you're going to treat this infection. And this is something that I really look forward to when ASTar coming out commercially, to see more of these type of cases where we can actually help change outcome for patients. Of course, in this case, since the product were not CE marked at the moment, we could not, of course, act upon it. If we then look at 2020, and I've selected a number of highlights for the year. Of course, a very important highlight for the upcoming commercialization of ASTar was that we could sign a global partnership with Thermo Fisher Scientific. This is something we have been working on for a long time, and we see the need for these type of products is really a worldwide need, and to have a strong, reputable partner to help us expand and take the product out to the customer is very important. We'll of course also address the Swedish market ourselves. This was a big milestone in the early part of the year. Another part was also moving towards commercialization. We can open 2 new facilities. One was the production for consumables, as I mentioned, but also new commercial headquarters where we could invite customers for training. We could also invite personnel from Thermo Fisher, either service engineers or technical specialists, to do training on ASTar. Of course, we could not do that during last year because of the pandemic, but I think we are well equipped for the future as soon as it's opened up. We can also initiate and start the planning for our first health economic study, which I think is going to be very important and very interesting to see what that can prove that ASTar can provide in saving lives or time or money at the hospitals. And of course, throughout the year, we're ramping up production capacity for consumables, preparing before the launch. All done very successfully, and I'm really proud about the team that made this possible. If we then look at ASTar, as you remember, we also announced a problem 2019 that we have seen in ASTar with a component that actually didn't live up to our expectations. But we can also announce during the first part of the year that we have solved that issue and can really now move on with the development towards, of course, coming into the clinical study of ASTar. We also presented very strong preclinical data from Uppsala University Hospital, both data from positive blood cultures, but also usability and user feedback. And that, of course, was very positive to have that early on during the year. And then finally, at the end of the year, we could announce that we started the European clinical study for ASTar for the first application on positive blood cultures. And of course, a major, major milestone and something we've been working for many, many years to accomplish. Apart from that, we can also see that in parallel, we can see that we have now a 6-month shelf life on the consumables. And of course, that's an ongoing study where we plan to expand that as we move along. But interestingly, we look at Q-linea. We are not just ASTar. We are looking at developing of other products. And I'm also very happy that we could, during the end of last year, announce our next product in development. It's a portable culturing technology, and the goal is really to bring the capacity of the microbiology labs, the centralized lab, out to the site of sampling. Thereby, the diagnostic workflow can start immediately after sampling, saving a lot of time and potentially also provide equal and better care from everyone. And when you look at Q-linea, the one that have been following us know that we have furthermore activities and products into development. So I'm really excited about the future, of course, to see this product coming out, but not only ASTar, also other products. I would then like to summarize the financial summary from 2020. You have all the numbers here. And what I think is important last year was, of course, that we did a successful rights issue of 270 million kronor that really could support the expansion and the launch of the product. So I think that was very strong. If we then look from 2021, you can also see that the operating loss had increased a little bit. And of course, this is all due to the fact that we are scaling up, we are preparing to launch, and that, of course, we're also running more projects in development. But I think one important message is that we have a short-term investment, cash and cash equivalents, after the first quarter, 274.2 million. And that is deemed by the board of directors to be sufficient to run the company for at least 12 months. So I think we are in a good position here to move into the commercial phase of ASTar. Because as you see, we could just recently announce that we have now CE-marked ASTar for the first application. And I'm so happy and so excited that we've done that. So we are now charging on together with Thermo Fisher, doing pre-market, moving into market activities. We are running high with training personnel, and we're finalizing really the marketing message before the launch of the product. We are also looking, of course, at its stage launch. I think that's always the best way to launch a new product, that you start looking at evaluation sites first, get positive feedback, or if you need to change something, you do that immediately before you go really put the pedal down, so to speak, and go broader for launch. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation for 2020. And I think we have done a great job during last year. And I think we have some really exciting times up ahead of us now, moving into 2021. And with that, I would like to say thank you from me. And I hope you continue to follow Q-linea, because we are on an exciting journey. Thank you very much.